Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Samantha Blake. I'm the Deputy CEO of the Australian Food and Grocery Council. As you can see, they've changed it. I am Samantha Blake. Sorry, it's supposed to be Samuel Garcia making the presentation today, so we're bringing you the two Sams. Firstly, a little bit about the Australian Food and Grocery Council. We're a member-based organisation representing food, grocery and beverage manufacturers and suppliers here in Australia. We cover off very large organisations, multinational organisations like Kellogg's, Unilever, Nestle, all the way down to small privately run organisations like Beechworth Honey, Berenberg Jams or Beechworth Honey. The role of the Australian Food and Grocery Council is to work on behalf of its members. We do that through four areas. Firstly, we work on policy, which is developing appropriate policy to ensure that the industry remains competitive, profitable and continues to grow. Secondly, we work on advocacy, and advocacy is with both federal and state governments and also with key stakeholders like our supermarket retail friends. The third area of work is on collective action, where we bring industry together to resolve issues that individually they can't. And then the fourth area we work on is really helping our members navigate complex issues through the provision of insights and thought leadership. We do all of this work across four core areas. Firstly, sustainability, which is a key platform for the industry at the moment. Second is health and nutrition and health regulation. The third area is commercial and sales, and the fourth area is supply chain. And today that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about, is the supply chain piece of the work that we do. Everyone's good with the microphone? Yep, great. Okay, so supply chain within the AFGC. One of the core areas for work with us in the AFGC for supply chain is the Trading Partner Forum. The Trading Partner Forum brings retailers and suppliers together to work on industry issues that are going to drive improvements and efficiency within our combined supply chain. So we're very much focused on the retail supplier supply chain in this piece. Clearly the work that we do in this area is very much based on non-competitive focus areas, and we're governed by competition law, so we can't go into collusive behaviours. So we're trying to identify the areas where we can work together to bring improvements to supply chain that's going to be of the benefit of the supplier, of the retailer and ultimately the consumer. That Trading Partner Forum is made up of Coles, Woolworths, Metcash and then our New Zealand retailers Countdown and Foodstuffs. And we also have 5 multinational suppliers that work as part of that committee. So how do we work? Oh, I forgot to start my timer. How do we work? What we do is we bring the industry together. We get the industry to identify issues that they are having within their combined supply chain. And then we invite subject matter experts to join a working group or a steering committee group to really delve into that particular issue. So the projects that we run are by industry for industry, and they're very much focused on the needs of the sector right now. Those groups of people, those subject matter experts that we bring together, will evaluate what the issue is, and they'll come up with resolutions or solutions on what we can do to try to improve or drive greater efficiencies in those areas. Once they've done that, they will then determine what are the outputs. The outputs could be key guides, could be presentations, could be standards, and they'll deliver that in forms of collateral and key information that's going to be useful for the sector. Once we've delivered the collateral, we then start looking at how we can educate the suppliers and the retailers around those outcomes. We then measure those outcomes so that we can develop a continuous improvement loop to come back into trying to improve whatever those issues are. Now that all sounds very nebulous, so let me give you some examples of how it works. But before I do that, just wanted to touch on FMCG challenges in Australia. I'm sure that all of you are more than familiar with the challenges that we have faced over the last 4+ years in Australia on supply chains. I pull a couple of these out because I'm wanting to lead us to this piece here around collaboration and the need for collaboration. Because I think what's happened over the last 4 years has really driven the industry to seek greater collaboration between trading partners in this workspace. So firstly, we have very complex supply chains. We do not grow or make all the product that we need to consume here in Australia. We need to import packaging, ingredients, a whole range of items need to come into Australia. As we know, we've had major issues in our ports with industrial action, we've had container shortages, we've had a lack of ships coming to Australia over the COVID period, and a number of other issues that have impacted this area, particularly around the Red Sea and the war in Ukraine. We operate in an environment that is geographically diverse, and we've got long distances that we need to traverse with our products. Most FMCG products, 70% of them are manufactured on the East Coast, and we need to service the rest of Australia, west and north, with those products. So clearly when the floods occurred and the East-West rail line went out for 3+ months, that was a major issue for the sector. It meant that vehicles started to have to run product over to the west, and that meant there was a shortage of vehicles on the East Coast. So our geographical scale and distance does cause us issues. We also are reliant on road transport predominantly for the movement of a product around Australia, and that in and of itself brings problems. And our population density is really interesting. As you know, it's all around urban areas, but we have a requirement to service rural and regional areas and provide the appropriate food at the right quality, particularly for those really regional areas. Long distances to travel. All of these things, though, over COVID led us to a real focus on collaborating as a supply chain and making sure we could get product to where it needed to get to. So the FMCG side, their role was to make sure they continued manufacturing and shipping product into retail DCs. Retailers needed to ensure that their DCs were working and that they were getting that product out. So there was great collaboration. I use this as an example because the project I'm about to take you through now is another true example of collaboration, and I think is really the way that we're going to have to drive the industry in terms of developing greater efficiencies within supply chain. So, to the project. We refer to this project as the Perfect Delivery Project. What the aim of the project is really to improve compliance of product being receipted into distribution centres, at supermarket distribution centres. Before we started this project, our key supermarket retailers and wholesalers here in Australia had their own sets of guidelines for how they wanted product receipted into their DCs. There were a lot of similarities, but there was also a lot of differences. The differences weren't significant, they were just around the edges. But it meant from a supplier's point of view, you may be having to comply to at least 3 different sets of specifications for getting your product into those distribution centres. And of course, as an FMCG manufacturer, that's not how you operate. You operate in terms of manufacturing your product, putting it on a pallet, storing it, and then shipping it out. Suddenly there were these slight differences that you were needing to determine how you were going to manage those non-compliances. Were you going to be compliant with one and therefore not compliant with another? So what we did is we brought the industry together, and great credit to our retail trade friends. They were up for the challenge of looking at their specifications, comparing them to their competitors, and working out where the similarities were and where they could align around specific components of those. That resulted in the Common Delivery Guidelines. Common Delivery Guidelines is a document that you can download from our website. All our material is open source, free of charge. The Common Delivery Guidelines provide line by line instructions of what is going to be compliant across Coles, Woolworths and Metcash. We've agreed on 115 core components where we now have agreement across all of those retailers. As it says here on the slide, the purpose for doing this is really to drive compliance of products going into retail distribution centres, to reduce costs, to reduce the amount of rejections that were happening in the industry, to improve product availability and ultimately lead to an improved on-shelf availability for consumers. So that was the purpose of the guidelines. Guidelines are now in about their 3rd or 4th iteration, and we have processes in place which will ensure that we keep them up to date. So what's in them? What we've got in them are 4 core components. 4 core components are trade units, which is looking at carton suitability, conditions and barcoding. We've got pallet quality, in our logistics units, pallet quality, tolerances, tie highs, wrapping and labelling. We've got a section on data, which includes everything from advanced shipping notices to SSC label consistencies. And then we've got our delivery in full on time, our DIFOT parameters. So they're all the bits that are conducted into the guidelines. What do they look like? Here's some examples of what they look like. What you'll see on most of the pages within the document is there will be a written part which is explaining exactly what the requirements are and what you need to complete or work towards. And then there'll also be a visual representation of what I call the good, the bad and the ugly. So it's kind of telling you this is what we want, this is not what we want, and really giving it that kind of visual focus for us. We work with Low Creative to design this, and I think they do a fantastic job. And as you can see, they're retail agnostic and supplier agnostic, so we're not really putting any particular person under the spotlight. So this is a big tomb of a document, but it does align, as I said, those 115 components across all the retailers. In addition to this, what we've subsequently done is we've developed an industry alignment mark, which is a little kind of circly logo that is now starting to appear in the retailer's own packaging and barcoding specification guidelines. And this little logo will just indicate to the supplier that this particular requirement is aligned to industry standards. And that then, I think, brings a level of comfort to the FMCG sector that if they're complying with this, it's going to be acceptable to all of the retailers that they're supplying through to. In addition to this, we've also developed a checklist, which is like an easy ready reckoner for your folk in distribution centres to be able to use just to check loads before they're shipped off to DCs. Okay, so great job done, not quite. What we then moved on to was measurement. This is a really bad slide, my apologies. But what we've started to do over the last 3 years is to run a survey of all the participating retailers to ask them how they would rate suppliers' ability to be able to deliver against those standards. We asked them 3 questions. We asked them the prevalence of that issue occurring, the trend, is it trending up or down, and then we asked them the impacts on their DC. So from that, we can then tease out a bit of a measure to identify which issues are the most problematic for the entire industry and which ones do we then now need to focus on as a group. The results that you're looking at now are for 2022, which seems an age ago, but the survey is done a year in arrears. So we'll shortly be launching the 2023 results in about April, which will be a focus on what happened last year. We do this for both ambient and chilled distribution centres, so we can identify if there's any differences. So what did we find in 2022? No surprises. Pallet quality in 2022 was off the scale, and I'm sure many of you remember the issues that we had with pallets. So if we just park that one for the moment, because that's almost been completed. Then we had carton suitability and condition and damaging, pallet wrapping and carton barcoding and issues. So we know what our top issues are. So to help industry identify those top issues, what we've done is developed up some one-page guides, again, free of charge, open source. Each one of these guides, 1 page, a bit of a description on what you need to achieve, and then here we're doing again the good, the bad and the ugly, so it's very visual. These should be used by your teams in the distribution centres as part of their induction, their training, any town halls that you have. You can hand them out to them, all available, so that we can look to, as an industry, drive compliance going into distribution centres. This is becoming more and more important as we move to automated distribution centres, because as we know, the requirement becomes tighter and tighter for the delivery into those. So this has been a whistle-stop tour of the work that we've done through the Trading Partner Forum to try to drive compliance through our perfect delivery work. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight. There is a website link here where you can pop onto it and find all of the information. Once you look up Trading Partner Forum, you'll be able to download all that material. I'm going to be hanging around for a few minutes, so if there's any questions, then please don't hesitate to come and chat. Thank you very much for your time.